Hey guys, this is Illusion PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading "'Cause I Know That It's Delicate" by the oncoming Stormageddon. The summary is, Clark Kent is tasked to write an article about the Gotham Bat, and people notice that he sounds more than a little infatuated. Weeks later, Clark keeps getting kidnapped by people who think he's dating Batman, and it's starting to become a problem. Alright, without further ado, let's hop right in. You have ties with the Daily Planet, don't you, Cal? Batman doesn't do small talk, not even with Clark. Not even when they were taking the night shift for monitor duty, the world safely asleep below them, which meant that this conversation was exactly the one Clark had been dreading since the first time one of Batman's rogues had kidnapped him. "Yeah, I guess you could say that," Clark replied. "Why do you ask?" "Yeah, play it cool. That would fool the world's greatest detective." "What do you know about Clark Kent?" Batman's question sat heavy in Clark's stomach. "The article's good," Lois had said, after Clark asked her to proofread it. "It's just, you sound a little infatuated." "That's just because you already know how I feel about him," Clark insisted. "No one else is going to think that." He really should have listened to Lois. He should have pushed harder for Perry to assign the opinion piece on the Gotham Bat to someone else. He should have just let Two-Face drop him in the giant vat of vibrant, bubbling acid. The problem wasn't just that everyone thought Clark Kent was infatuated with Batman. Everyone thought Batman loved him back. Even then, Clark hoped that Batman wasn't the type to read the gossip magazine spreading the rumors about Batman and his new reporter boyfriend. But all his hopes were dashed when Batman showed up to save him from the first kidnapping, and the second a few days later, from a different rogue who also believed he was kidnapping Batman's beloved partner. "I know who you are, Mr. Kent," Batman had told him dryly after Clark tried to introduce himself. He still remembered the way Batman had gently cradled his face while he undid the gag. It was ridiculous. Clark forced a laugh, trying to wipe the memory from his mind. Batman would be that gentle with anyone. "Clark Kent? I think Lois Lane might have mentioned him a few times. He seems like a nice guy." Batman scowled. "So you've seen the rumors, then?" He hoped Batman couldn't see the heat rising in his face. A glance at the clock told him that they still had an hour left on their shift, and that was if Barry arrived on time to relieve them. "Lois told me," Clark replied. "I didn't believe them, obviously." Batman's lip curled, and Clark's heart sunk just a little deeper in his chest. "You must find the whole thing pretty annoying, huh?" "It's getting dangerous," Batman said. His voice was gravely serious, and Clark suddenly felt a wave of guilt for getting kidnapped, pulling Batman away from the more important things that were going on in Gotham. "The next time he gets kidnapped, you have my permission to enter Gotham to save him." What? Clark stared. Batman was still looking at the monitor, seemingly unbothered by the attention. Batman didn't want other superheroes entering Gotham, ever, unless it was a life-or-death situation. So was Clark Kent that important, or was Batman just that tired of the situation? "You're not going to save him anymore?" Clark asked. Batman's voice was pointedly logical, as always. "The more I do, the more I perpetuate the idea that we're together." It made perfect sense. Clark didn't know why he expected anything different. Of course Batman would take his situation, take Clark's heart being bled out on his sleeve for the world to see, and simply tie off the tourniquet as tightly as possible to keep the rest of Clark from bleeding out completely. But there was one problem. Clark swallowed, already dreading the words. "I can't." Batman turned, his voice going cold. "You can't?" "I can't. Save him, I mean. The Superman I know would never refuse to help a civilian in danger." "What, you still don't trust me? I thought we were past this." It was a bad deflection, they both knew it. But Batman didn't seem wary of Clark. He knew what Batman's face did when he was looking at a threat, when he was looking at Clark as a threat. This was interest. This was curiosity. He was a slide under Batman's microscope. No, a little packet of molecules being sent through a mass spectrometer, ready to get blasted apart by electrons so Batman could piece them back together. "You're hiding something from me about Kent." Clark's silence must have been enough of an answer, because after a long minute Batman said, "Is he dangerous?" That question had Clark fighting a smile. "Not to Gotham." "Does he really have feelings for me?" Superman hesitated, but Clark figured out at least one of his identities deserved the ability to be in love, even if Batman never returned it, even if it kept getting Clark kidnapped. Yes, he does. Batman hadn't stopped staring at Clark. Clark cleared his throat and pretended to stare at the monitor they were supposed to be monitoring. Batman had never met Clark Kent. Batman started slowly, but in the article, there were some details that implied a certain level of familiarity. Yeah, he really should have listened to Lois. But Batman still didn't sound upset. You read the article? It got someone kidnapped. Of course I read the article. No, Clark said. He thought back to Batman's hand on his face. I know who you are, Mr. Kent. No, you read it before that. Clark was expecting a deeper scowl combined with something close to condescending about how obviously Batman would keep tabs on any newspaper article that mentioned his name. He wasn't expecting the hesitance followed by a grumbled, Kent's a good writer. And Clark had no idea what to say to that. Giddiness curled in his chest like a cat in a spot of bright sun. Batman must have caught sight of Clark's expression because he added, I didn't say he'd never met Bruce Wayne. It wasn't a surprise. Clark had known Bruce's identity since the moment they met. It wasn't hard to recognize the steady heartbeat, even through the layer of expensive clothes. But it was one thing for Clark to know, and another for Bruce to give it up willingly. Clark just hoped it meant what he thought it did, especially since Brucey Wayne made no less than 5 different innuendos within 20 minutes of meeting Clark Kent the first time around. Any truth to the idea that Batman and Clark Kent are dating? Clark asked finally. The comment earned a tiny smile from Bruce, a twitch at the corner of his mouth lifting up. Of course not. He's a civilian. Any kind of tie to me would put him in danger. And if he was hypothetically bulletproof, or immune to giant vats of acid? Clark. Yes, Bruce. Turn off the cameras. This time, when Batman gently cupped Clark's face, there was no mistaking the reasoning behind it. Clark's eyes fluttering shut as he leaned in, his lips brushing against Bruce. I thought you were dating that reporter guy! Clark and Bruce jumped apart to see Barry, early to his shift for the very first time, standing in the doorway. Bruce just sighed, reaching past Clark to flip the cameras back on. The next time Clark Kent got kidnapped, he was walking back to Metropolis after a nice dinner with Bruce Wayne. True to Batman's plan, he was saved by Wonder Woman. Unfortunately, Harley Quinn kidnapped him 2 days later to demand why he broke up with Batman, but at least she didn't dangle him over another acid pit. Alright guys, and that is the end of 'Cause I Know That It's Delicate by the oncoming Stormageddon. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you in the next video.